So, in this video, I'm going to give a short overview of topic 1.4, which is comparative advantage in trade, which is literally like all of the FRQs for Unit 1. So, this entire situation that we're going to see on these graphs here and demonstrate this scenario is derived from the idea that there are always gains from trade. And this is true because in microeconomics, we always assume that economic actors act rationally. So they're not going to do something that is at their own cost, and therefore, they're not going to do a trade that hurts them. They're only going to do trades that benefit them. And because of that, because they're only doing trades that benefit them and a trade that does not benefit them will not occur, there are always gains from trades in microeconomics, even in a situation like below, where Yidos has an absolute advantage, which basically means that he can produce more of both the goods seen on the PPF um, over over Yeats. He has an absolute advantage in bread because he can produce 80, while Yeats can only at his maximum produce 60, and an absolute advantage in apples because at his maximum he can produce 40, while Yeats can only produce 20. However, just because he has an absolute advantage does not mean that he won't benefit from trade. And the reason for this is because of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is a situation in which an individual business or country can produce a good or service at a lower opportunity cost than another producer. So this is going to be involving slope rather than just maximum quantities. And the way we can find opportunity cost is by examining the figure that we're looking at. So bread here, if we wanted to find what the opportunity cost for one loaf of bread would be, you put the maximum amount of bread and the maximum amount of things that it's costing. So if we're producing 80 pieces of bread, we can no longer produce 40 apples. So our cost is 40 apples. And if you divide by 80 on both sides, you're going to get one bread is equal or is costs of an apple. And you'll see this down here. That's what this is. You can do it the other way around so that 40 apples costs 80 bread and then divide by 40. So you get one apple costs 2 loaves of bread. That you can also just flip the reciprocal to get the other answer. And you can do the exact same thing for Yeats. So 60 bread costs 20 and 20 apples cost 60 bread. Sorry, that's my chair. Okay. Now that we have this all graphed out, little spoiler alert, but we can find the comparative advantage for each the comparative advantage that each actor has, because unless opportunity costs are the same for each individual in the situation, they will have at least a comparative advantage in at least one good. If you look here, the cost for bread. So Yidos can produce one loaf of bread at the cost of half of an apple, while Yeats can produce one loaf of bread at the cost of a third of an apple, which is less than a half, and therefore producing one loaf of bread is a lower cost to him than it is to Yidos. On the other hand, one apple costs 2 loaves of bread for Yidos, and it costs 3 loaves of bread for Yeats. Since 2 is less than 3, Yidos has a lower cost per apple than Yeats. And so they have different comparative advantage in the two different goods. Now, because they have an advantage in two different goods, and they might want to expand their PPF if they want to benefit from trade, they might both specialize in the good that they have the comparative advantage in. So Yeats has a comparative advantage in bread because he has a lower opportunity cost per bread. So he's going to produce 60 bread. He's not going to produce a single apple. And Yitos is going to produce only his apples. He's not going to produce any bread, just 40 apples straight up. Sorry, this is. And this is how we get into the idea of trade. So the way that I'll go back and look at terms of trade in a minute because that's more looking at making sure your thing checks out and mathematically works. But okay. So if you look here, Yitos has 0 bread and 40 apples, and Yeet has 60 bread and 0 apples. Because they both specialized, that's not right. It should not be 60 bread. Oh, it is 60. Yeah, sorry, my bad. It should be 60 bread. So Yitos has 40 apples and Yeet has 60 bread. But Yitos wants bread and Yeet wants apples. How are they going to go about trading? So Yitos, with his 40 apples, is willing to trade some of those apples away because he's producing more than he would have produced beforehand when they were in their former situation in which he was doing 16 pieces of bread and 32. And Yeats was doing 42 pieces of bread and 6 apples. So he's willing to trade what he used to have because he wants to still benefit from trade. So 40 minus 32 is 8. He's also not going to trade 8 away because then he'll have exactly 32 and it'll be exactly the same. So it's an 8 non-inclusive. Oops, sorry. He will trade less than 8 of his apples away to Yeats. That's what he's willing to put away. So I'm going to put less than 8. But Yeat is, because he had 6 apples beforehand, if as long as he's getting more apples than what he had initially, he's going to be happy. Though, of course, once again, it's going to be non-inclusive. So he wants more than 6. And so we have a little domain here that we can use. And that's going to tell us that, well, I'll go back to it actually, the bread as well. So Yeet is producing bread, and he's going to do the same thing that Yitos was. He's not going to produce, or he's not going to give away more bread than he has. And he has, if you do 60 minus 42, that's going to be 18 pieces of bread. He's going to trade away up to 18, but not 18 pieces of bread. Whereas Yitos will be happy as long as he gets more than 16 non-inclusive. So we can put 16 here. And those are our domains. So for the trade to take place, it has to be any number between 6 and 8 non-inclusive, or any number between 16 and 18 pieces of bread non-inclusive. Now this one's going to turn out really easy to figure out which number you want to choose, but really on many other comparative advantage FRQ problems, you're going to be given probably a much larger domain and you'll be able to pick any number in that thing. It does not matter which number you pick. But this one's really easy if we're using whole numbers, 7 and 17. So if Yitos has 0 bread and 40 apples, and he trades away 7, so he loses 7 apples, so now he has 33. And Yeet gains 7, so now he has 7. That's what their final product is going to look like. Now, Yeet is going to trade 17 pieces of bread back to Yitos. Not back to, but he's going to trade 17 pieces in exchange for the 7 apples that he got. So he's now going to have, Yitos is going to have 17 pieces of bread, and Yeet is going to have 43 pieces of bread. And that's going to end up looking like that. And so we'll know if our trade is good if we check it with our terms of trade. The terms of trade are the minimum and maximum amounts that could possibly be traded, always falling between the lowest and highest opportunity cost. So for this example here, if you look at apples, it's going to fall, the terms of trade are going to fall between 2 loaves of bread and 3, the cost of 2 and 3, where loaves of bread are going to be between 1/3 and 1/2. So if we solve this in terms of loaves of bread, so we traded 7 loaves of bread let me do 17 loaves of bread for 7 apples. If you do 17 divided by both of these, it's one bread is going to equal about 0.4 apple. And what we checked before is, or what we need to check is if it is going to be in between 13 and 1/2. 1/3 and 1/2. So that's in between 1.3 and 1.5, which 1.4 falls exactly in there. And that means that our terms of trade have been met. This is a viable trade option.